the Shadow of the Silent Majorities, or The End of the Social, an essay by Jean Baudrillard, read by Stеaдyй Делта. Translator's note. Throughout the text, lamas, thermas, imply a condensation of terms, which allows Baudrillard to make a number of central puns and allusions. For not only does lamas directly refer to the physical and philosophical sense of substance or matter, it can just as easily mean the majority, as in the mass of workers, or even the electrical usage of an earth. Hence, thermas can simultaneously mean to form a mass, to form an earth, or to form a majority. Part 2. The Abyss of Meaning. So it is with information. Whatever its political, pedagogical, cultural content, the plan is always to get some meaning across, to keep the masses within reason, an imperative to produce meaning that takes the form of the constantly repeated imperative to moralize information, to better inform, to better socialize, to raise the cultural level of the masses, etc. Nonsense. The masses scandalously resist this imperative of rational communication. They are given meaning. They want spectacle. No effort has been able to convert them to the seriousness of the content, nor even to the seriousness of the code. Messages are given to them. They only want some sign. They idolize the play of signs and stereotypes. They idolize any content so long as it resolves itself into a spectacular sequence. What they reject is the dialectic of meaning, nor is anything served by alleging that they are mystified. This is always a hypocritical hypothesis, which protects the intellectual complacence of the producers of meaning. The masses spontaneously aspire to the natural light of reason. This in order to evade the reverse hypothesis, namely, that it is in complete freedom that the masses oppose their refusal of meaning and their will to spectacle to the ultimatum of meaning. They distrust, as with death, this transparency and this political will. They scent the simplifying terror which is behind the ideal hegemony of meaning, and they react in their own way by reducing all articulate discourse into a single irrational and baseless dimension where signs lose their meaning and peter out in fascination, the spectacular. Once again, it is not a question of mystification. It is a question of their own exigencies, of an explicit and positive counter-strategy, the task of absorbing and annihilating culture, knowledge, power, the social. An immemorial task, but one which assumes its full scope today, a deep antagonism which forces the inversion of received scenarios. It is no longer meaning which would be the ideal line of force in our societies, that which eludes it being only waste intended for reabsorption sometime or other. On the contrary, it is meaning which is only an ambiguous and inconsequential accident, an effect due to ideal convergence of a perspective space at any given moment, history, power, etc., and which, moreover, has only ever really concerned a tiny fraction and superficial layer of our societies. And this is true of individuals also. We are only episodic conductors of meaning, for in the main and profoundly, we form a mass, living most of the time in panic or haphazardly, above and beyond any meaning. Now, with this inverse hypothesis, everything changes. Take one example from 1,000 concerning this contempt for meaning: the folklore of silent passivities. On the night of Classe Croissant's extradition, the TV transmitted a football match in which France played to qualify for the World Cup. Some hundreds of people demonstrated outside L'Enceinte. A few barristers ran to and fro in the night. 20 million people spent their evening glued to the screen. An explosion of popular joy when France won. Consternation and indignation of the Illuminati over this scandalous indifference. Le Monde. 9 p.m. At that time, the German barrister had already been taken out of Lausanne. A few minutes later, Rocheteau scored the first goal. Melodrama of indignation. Not a single query about the mystery of this indifference. One same reason is always invoked: the manipulation of the masses by power, their mystification by football. In any case, this indifference ought not to be. Hence it has nothing to tell us. In other words, the silent majority is even stripped of its indifference. It has no right, even that this be recognized and imputed to it. Even this apathy must have been imposed on it by power. What contempt behind this interpretation? Mystified, the masses are not allowed their own behavior. Occasionally, they are conceded a revolutionary spontaneity by which they glimpse the rationality of their own desire, that yes, but God protect us from their silence and their inertia. It is exactly this indifference, however, that demands to be analyzed in its positive brutality, instead of being dismissed as white magic or as a magic alienation which always turns the multitudes away from their revolutionary vocation. Moreover, how does it succeed in turning them away? Can one ask questions about the strange fact that after several revolutions and a century or two of political apprenticeship, in spite of the newspapers, the trade unions, the parties, the intellectuals, and all the energy put into educating and mobilizing the people, there are still, and will be exactly the same in 10 or 20 years, 1,000 persons who stand up and 20 million who remain passive, and not only passive, but who, in all good faith, and with glee and without even asking themselves why, frankly prefer a football match to a human and political drama. It is curious that this proven fact has never succeeded in making political analysis shift ground, but on the contrary reinforces it in its vision of an omnipotent manipulatory power and a mass prostrate in an unintelligible coma. Now none of this is true, and both the above are a deception. Power manipulates nothing. The masses are neither misled nor mystified. Power is only too happy to make football bear a facile responsibility, even to take upon itself the diabolical responsibility for stupefying the masses. This comforts it in its illusion of being power, and leads away from the much more dangerous fact that this indifference of the masses is their only practice, that there is no other ideal of them to imagine, nothing in this to deplore, but everything to analyze as the brute fact of a collective retaliation and of a refusal to participate in the recommended ideals, however enlightened. What is at stake in the masses lies elsewhere. We might as well take note and recognize that any hope of revolution, the whole promise of the social and of social change, has only been able to function up until now thanks to this dodging of the issue, this fantastic denial. We might as well begin again, as Freud did in the psychic order, from this remainder, from this blind sediment, from this waste or refuse of meaning, from this unanalyzed and perhaps unanalyzable fact. There is a good reason why such a Copernican revolution has never been undertaken in the political universe. It is the whole political order that is in danger of paying the price.